I'm Dr. Edmund Sulkowski, and welcome to the Dr. Ed Show. We have a wonderful show for you today. I think you're going to find it interesting, especially at this time of year, as the weather changes and the snow's coming, and we have animals that we really have to take care of. And we have two wonderful, dedicated people here that are going to discuss that today. But before we start the show, let me remind everybody that you can listen to me live every Saturday morning on AM 1250 The Answer for the Dr. Ed Show, where you can call in, and we have wonderful guests where we can discuss health and a number of other topics. So that's live every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on 1250 AM The Answer and 92.5 FM. So let's welcome my good friend Jessie.
Hi,
Jessie,
Dr. Ed.
it's always a pleasure to see you.
Oh, same here.
And Jessie's been taking care of animals for 30 years, and she's founded Angels for Animals. So we're going to go into detail later on in the show. We're going to do a two-parter today, actually, and talk about Jessie and how many animals she's rescued and put into forever homes. And I know I had 5 of her, what I call Jessie dogs, and they've all been wonderful dogs.
Thank
and
you.
with us today is Michelle Bruce. Welcome, Michelle.
Nice to see you again.
And Michelle is founder of Fix Your Cat. And that's going to be the focus on this first part, because there's a big cat population out there that people kind of ignore, because there's something about how we treat dogs and how we treat cats. So could you address that for us, Michelle?
Well, I think people do treat their dogs with a little bit more respect, although we've seen in the news in the last year educated people who did not necessarily respect their dogs. But with cats, normally cats, they're considered property, and people pretty much can do what they want with their cats. There are laws which are not enforced, so they tend to be more transient pets, you know, in every neighborhood, whether it's a low-income neighborhood or a high-income neighborhood. For some unknown reason, people think they can move and leave their cat behind, and somebody will take care of it. But unfortunately, that just means that the same problems occur in every area, whether it's rural, you know, urban, or your neighborhood.
Yeah, I think people seem to think that cats are a lot more independent. In some ways they are, and dogs are much more dependent on us, and they kind of treat them accordingly. You know, I always look at cats, and I've never really had cats. I've taken a few strays in that took me in for a while, and then and then decided to move on. But these cats kind of think they're God, and dogs kind of think you're God.
That's what they say.
You know,
that's what dog owners say.
Yeah.
You know, with cats though, they are not necessarily independent. I know I have a cat that would have more of a chance of using a can opener than catching its own prey. So, you know, an indoor cat put outdoors is just cruelty. It is also illegal. So people have to think long and hard. It's a forever pet, and if you don't and cannot commit forever to your pet, whether it's a dog, a cat, a guinea pig, you need to think about what you will be able to do with that pet, just as we were talking about. If you move, if you go away to college, you know, or if somebody passes away. So you have to include that in all your plans that you make.
Well, you have to think about healthcare. So let's address healthcare. What are the things that we have to do for our cats?
So basic health care for a cat or a dog would be spay and neuter, so that they don't produce more litters that cannot be homed. Also for the females, it cuts out the chances of cancer, uterine cancer in dogs and cats, which is a big issue. And if done on an emergency basis, can be thousands of dollars to save an animal's life at the emergency clinic. So a simple spay and neuter nips that right in the bud.
You do it like early on is the best time to do that, but
you can do it any time.
You can do it any time.
You know,
yeah.
we regularly see cats over 5 years old, and Fix Your Cat does offer pre-anesthetic blood work, and we do suggest that for older cats. But the idea is it's safer for that cat to be spayed and neutered unless there's a major problem, like a major heart issue, than to just go ahead and breed, because that's also not a good lifestyle.
And you mentioned cancer. That's also occurs on male animals who aren't neutered because they can develop prostate problems as well.
Correct. No, we
and
see that mainly in dogs.
Yeah,
so,
in dogs, and people don't think about that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. I mean, you know, you save a few bucks early on, but what happens as you go later down the road and the cat or dog is 6 or 8 years old, and all of a sudden these major problems occur. And it is literally a several $1,000 surgery when you do it as an emergency. The same thing for vaccinations. Rabies is required by law in the state of Pennsylvania.
And that is the only required by law vaccination, correct?
Correct. But there's a lot of other vaccinations that ensure that the animal stays healthy. We call one distemper, and it has to be boosted, and the ones that we administer are boosted every year. But it covers 4 different cat diseases. It's all the snuffly diseases like rhinotracheitis, panleukopenia, and you have a healthy animal if you take the time and spend $10 to keep those vaccinations up, because we also offer low-cost vaccinations on a weekly basis. So we certainly, you know, those are the basic things that you need to do. And obviously at-home care, the best food you can afford, the best quality food you can afford, you know, a litter box that you're scooping twice a day, you know, access to the outdoors for dogs on a leash, that type of thing.
So you mentioned that it's illegal for an indoor cat to be let outside?
Abandoned outside.
So they can go in and out if they're inclined to come back and so forth?
It depends on the municipality. Most people discourage other people to let their cats outside. There's a lot of problems out there. It could be coyotes, it can be cars.
Hawks.
Hawks, they're big time during kitten season, right? Because nice little interesting prey for them. So there's a lot of dangers outdoors, accidental poisoning. But in the event that the cat goes in and out, there's also the law of the municipality that you live in. There are some areas that say if your cat goes outside, it can't leave your property, which is a little bit hard with cats.
Yeah, how are you
right?
going to do that?
Then, yeah, well, you might. I know people who have fences that'll keep a cat in, but unless you have a neighbor who complains, normally those laws also aren't enforced. So if you live in an area that was originally relatively rural, like your area, and now they're developing a lot there, all those cats that have been running around loose, some are feral, some are semi-feral, all of a sudden they start showing up on people's doorsteps because that's where they used to live, and now they know that there are people who might be able to feed them or take care of them. So they're just reclaiming their land.
So what is a feral cat?
Well, in my opinion, a feral cat is one that you probably won't ever see. They're the cats that come to your house at night. If you happen to be an outdoor feeder, they're not coming to see you. They're coming to eat, to drink, or to find shelter.
And they're kind of afraid of you, basically.
Very afraid.
Yeah.
You know, a cat, if it's actually coming up to you, and particularly if it's not in very good shape, because a lot of times the cats that are in worse shape outdoors are the cats that are abandoned. They don't know how to take care of themselves. I wouldn't know how to take care of myself if you dropped me off in the desert, right? I have no idea how to do that. Same thing with these cats. They've had a warm house, a food bowl, a water bowl, a litter box, and now they're outside. That is not a good transition for any type of animal. And as I say, there are laws, including state laws, that do not allow people to abandon animals under those circumstances. However, they're never enforced. And there's not a great deal of case law, and it's hard to build the case law because just like fracking was when it first came in, there wasn't any case law about fracking. So people had to actually go to court, sue, not sue, to develop case law. With animals, usually it's pled down or somebody just, you know, drops the charges. So there just hasn't been enough meaty prosecution for animal abuse, because a lot of it has to be done by volunteer groups, and of course they don't have the time or the money to do that prosecution, to make case law so that it could be a simpler procedure to hold people responsible for leaving their animals behind.
So what is considered animal abuse?
Well, I think it depends. So I am not an expert on that, but I do know with Washington Area Humane Society, they do have a humane officer, which is paid for by Washington Area Humane Society. It's not paid by the commissioners, it's not paid by the state. They really take care of that. And their officer does go to places that technically are abuse, that are indoor for the most part. It can also be animals on leashes outside without food, water, shelter.
And you see that often enough.
You see that often enough, and with dogs too, right? But it is hard because that's one person. There's another person out there that is also doing that type of work, who's a humane officer, and a third humane officer. But once they go in and see the situation, they need to be able to do something with those animals, and that's the problem. If you walk into an empty house, somebody passes away and there's 30 cats in there, now somebody has to be responsible for those 30 cats. And no funding, so it's really up to those volunteer organizations to say, hey, can you take two? Can you take two? And that's happened several times this year.
So that's called hoarding, right?
It can be called hoarding, yeah.
Yeah, 30 cats in somebody's home is basically hoarding.
Well, I know some people in big houses, which I wouldn't call it hoarding because it's very well managed. But the problem is, hoarding can take a lot of different, the word hoarding can apply to a lot of different things. But a lot of times it can be related to mental illness, where people just feel that they can do better for that animal than anybody else. It is very hard for them to find a home for it, or put it into an animal shelter who can also find a home for it. So it's hard. I mean, sometimes it's very hard to talk people out of animals.
Yeah, that's a lot of responsibility, a lot of cost in feeding,
hugely
and
expensive
veterinarian
right
care, and so forth. So you really, I think, if that's what you're doing, you're dedicating your life to taking care of these animals.
That's exactly, and many people are very dedicated. I know people who will, not go to their doctor's appointment because they're feeding a lot of animals. And as we all know, prices have really gone up. And animal feed, including livestock, cat food, dog food, is extremely expensive right now. So people who have found themselves in those situations, they're looking at, now my cat food bill's gone up 30%. And as far as we're concerned, we're trying to do everything low cost. But then again, our drugs and different things are going up as well. So we really fight having to raise our costs. And luckily, half of our people are volunteers. A lot of the administrative staff are volunteers who work for free. And that's one of the ways we can keep our costs down. Now, we have paid professionals who are, in my opinion, the best in the business, who do our medical work. But if you want to have people show up every day, you can't expect them just to have a day off and show up and do that type of work.
Sure.
We're doing surgeries 4 days a week. We're doing about 100 cats. Technically, we can do about 100 cats a week, and we are full. And then we do wellness 2 or 3 days a week, which is also full.
Well, we're going to get into the details on Fix Your Cat. Jess, you focus mostly on dogs, and you've been doing this for quite a long time.
Yep.
And it's a lot of effort on your part, and you do it all by yourself. And you have foster homes. Tell everybody what a foster home is,
That
as
would be
opposed
like
to a kennel.
you and Michelle. Michelle's adopted 2 dogs from me,
Failed foster.
and you had 4 or 5.
5.
5, okay. But a foster home, I said to Michelle, we have this dog coming in. We don't have any place for it. Could you foster it till we find a home for it? And she said, sure, no problem. So she takes the dog home, and basically she takes care of everything. Now, I have always said I pay for the vet and the food. Okay, so I do that for you, but some foster homes, they don't ask me for anything. No, that's their contribution. Okay, but I can also do it. Now we come into the grooming too, because a lot of the dogs do need groomed, but I focus mostly on the smaller dogs now because I only have a limited number of foster homes. But in Michelle's case and in Dr. Ed's case, I really like this dog. I'd like to keep it. So then she takes the dog and she becomes the family for the dog. So, but a foster home will keep the dog until we find a place for it.
And you're
then
supplying all of the food,
The
all
food
of the medical
and the
bills.
and the grooming, yes.
But you do that, you're not receiving money from the state or from the federal government.
No,
or
at my old age here, I'm still working.
and you do that solely to
And I
fund
do that
your,
for the
your
animals,
Angels for
yes.
And
Animals.
she doesn't have 30 cats, but she's still working for those dogs that aren't hers, basically.
Got 3 cats. But that's the focus of the foster home. and that provides a place for them to go where we don't have to put them into a shelter or in a cage or anything like that. And that foster home works with them, potty training, socializing them, and getting them used to a schedule, you know, eating, taking them outside, riding in the car, whatever they need. So that's a great thing, a foster home. But there again, you have to be committed. You have to say, this is part of my life now, and that's what I'm going to do. But then we take phone calls and we interview people. We do that very meticulously. And then we do a home check. We take the animal, the foster mother and myself, we go to the home, check everything out, check the fence, check the area, talk to the people for about an hour. We talk about food, how to take care of the dog, what the dog's used to, what we have done with the dog, and then if they decide that they want to try, they sign the contract, and there is a fee for every dog because there again we have to pay for everything. And then there's a 2-week trial period. And if within the 2 weeks you say to me, this dog's not going to work for me, we take the dog back and I refund the fee. I keep nothing. But after 2 weeks, if they decide, yes, the dog is ours, then I cash their check. But if they have a problem and they no longer want the dog at some future point, I take the dog back.
Yeah, well, we'll go into detail about
Yeah.
that because that doesn't happen very often, but I know it's happened a few times
Yes.
over the years.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
Usually when they adopt the dog from you,
They're committed.
they're committed
Yeah.
and they end up with pretty good dogs.
Yeah,
I mean,
they are.
I had a couple tortured dogs I took for you, but
Now,
they came
and I
around.
have to say, what people don't really realize is rescues like Jessie or any rescue cat or dog, they are not getting medical for free. They're not getting spay neuter for free.
or food for free.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they have a great deal of expense. And they're very particular about putting animals in homes because if the animal comes back out of the home, then you almost have to repeat some of those things because, all right, so if the
Yeah.
cat dog's been in somewhere else, you might have to for a DX test. So there's more expenses coming out. So people often complain about the examination process for adoption from all the organizations. But part of it is because you need to be sure that animal is going to do well in the home and it's going to stick. Nobody wants to bring it back and the poor animal's wondering, what did I do wrong?
Yeah, there's an emotional thing for the
Yeah.
animal.
Yeah.
Very.
You know, they get attached and they get
Oh, yes.
dependent on you, and then all of
Yeah.
a sudden their life is uprooted and
Yeah.
and fear sets in and so forth. So
Correct.
there's a lot of stress on both sides.
And I worked for the Humane Society a short amount of time because I had committed just for 6 months because they needed help. But I saw so much of that in the kennel, where the dog came in, didn't know why, and was just scared to death and just sitting in a corner shaking. So that's when I decided I'm going to do it.
You're going to do well. We all get spun off like that.
So Michelle, Fix Your Cat. Now I know you started in Canonsburg because I've had a number of patients come in and say, you know, when we talk and what do you do? And I volunteer for Fix Your Cat. And of course didn't have cats and I wasn't that familiar with Fix Your Cat, even though you were up the street from my office. So tell us what started Fix Your Cat.
So we actually started Fix Your Cat in 2012, and a woman by the name of Pat Spar, who's from Upper St. Clair, she and I recognized that the cost for spay and neuter had really gone up. At that time, people were being quoted like $300, which by today's standards, the quotes we're seeing can be up to $800. But when we saw that, and there wasn't any large spay and neuter group in Washington County. They were mainly in Allegheny County. So Pat had been on the board of Animal Friends. We went down and asked them if they would consider working with us to drive up spays and neuters to Animal Friends to serve people in Washington County. We weren't a nonprofit at the time. We weren't a rescue or a shelter. And they did actually agree. So that kind of started our mobile driving animals. We would meet in North Strabane at the police department in the snow, in the rain. People would bring their animals in carriers. We'd load up the car or the van, whatever we had, and we would drive them up to Animal Friends where they would perform the services, and the people would pay, or would try to pay, and then would bring them back.
And they have a wonderful facility there.
They have a great facility.
there
yeah.
a couple months ago actually
Yeah.
for their gala.
Yeah,
and-
that's right. Yeah.
and-
Yeah, they have a great facility, and you know that was a That was something that people were doing all over the United States, one central location that provided services to people or organizations at least an hour away. So there was a draw there. So we did that for quite a few years. Eventually we ended up doing our pickup and deliveries at South Point at the Isoplex. And when it was sold, the new owners did not want cats there anymore. So it kind of forced us, it was one of those epiphany moments where you're just thinking, is this the end of the organization? But we started to look to rent, and we found that it was cheaper to buy that building in Canonsburg because it had been empty for 10 years. That was going to be our pickup and drop-off spot. But one thing led to another, and we had Dr. Archer come down to us. We got a grant from Banfield at the time, and we bought surgical equipment. We set up a surgery. We also got other vet techs who were experienced in volume span neuter, and basically our clinic was born. And
so you're not doing this spades or neutering yourself.
I am not.
You have veterinarians that are coming in and
I am
doing
not
the work.
I'm not a veterinarian. I am not a vet tech. I call myself a mom. You know. So we're expediting. Trying to keep. It's a nonprofit, but it's a business. We have to pay our bills, and we have to pay all the different things. We have to be sure that we can pay our employees. So it's complicated, and we started small. Eventually, we started to look for a building all on one floor because it was limited, because we had to do surgeries upstairs in Canonsburg. And we ended up in Washington, where Solomon's Seafood Restaurant used to be. It was by Washington High School. And we moved in there in January. And
so you're just about having your
we're going to have our
first-year
one-year anniversary. I'll be letting Jessie know when we have our open house. But it's basically this year we might be looking at spaying and neutering close to 4,000 cats.
That's absolutely amazing, because
yeah.
you're doing a lot there
Yeah.
in that you're saving money for the owner of these animals, and it's a big difference.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And what they pay at your facility as opposed to the average veterinarian office.
Right.
And then second of all, you're reducing the population and stopping this feral cats, stopping this abandonment issue. So it's a wonderful thing that you're doing, and I'm so happy that you were on the Dr. Ed show on the radio talking about it. Now you're able to be on the TV show, make people aware that this is available for them.
Well, and the thing is, we believe that everybody should be able to provide basic services for their animals. And I am not saying, certainly full-service vets are not gouging their clients. They offer some different services that we don't have, like x-ray. They use laser to heal up the wound quicker. So there are other services they include in their spays and neuters. But the fact of the matter is, if you're getting $700 a month for Social Security, and you call your vet and the spay, they quote you over the phone $800, you're pretty much going to throw your hands up. We want people to know we're out there. Once again, we have great licensed staff. We can do an ear tip package, which is mainly for feral cats, but they can be indoor-outdoor cats for $65, including the rabies shot. We do female cats who are pet cats for $80, which is the spay, the pain meds, and the rabies, and male cats for $70. So the idea isn't to undercut vets, and actually what we're finding is we get a lot of recommendations from veterinarian groups, because if she walks in and she has one cat and then she says, some cat just had 10 cats under my deck, they're not going to say, gee, we'll do them for free, Jessie. They have people to pay too. But they do pass our card on in many cases.
And that scenario you just described happens all the time.
All the time, yeah, everywhere, yeah.
Yeah. So if I have a cat that suddenly shows up at the door, and I did have that happen one time. Mm-hmm. I called that cat Flea Bag because it was just loaded with fleas. And I actually neutered that cat on my washer and dryer. Oh. But I did that in school, so I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
It makes such a difference. But what's interesting is these stray cats that come sometimes, they hang around for a while, and then they decided, time for a change.
They're probably working in the neighborhood. There might be several feeders out there, and they go from feeder to feeder.
Yeah.
Or there might be somebody who marginally is caring for them, lets them in every once in a while when the weather gets cold. They feel sorry for them, they let them back out. But they're obviously not providing them with services, right? Not neutered, covered in fleas.
Yeah.
But yeah, your hope is that they do go down the road and find a better home.
Well,
but yeah.
it was really funny because, like I said, I've not had a lot of experience. I think growing up, I maybe had kittens one time for a while. Dogs and birds and fish were all over the house. But this cat that I called Fleabag would come and go. You know, he was not an indoor cat. I had food for him all the time and so forth, and water, and in wintertime put him in the basement if he would stay in there. So one day he just didn't come home. So you start to think, okay, it's not alive anymore, something killed it, got hit by a car, whatever, somebody adopted him. And several months later, I see Fleabag walking across the street. And I say, hey, Fleabag. Fleabag stops and he looks. And I'm like, where you been, you know? He just looked at me for a while and said, walked on. So then I had another cat that showed up. And this cat was really interesting. So I had, this was pre-Jessie dog days. So I had two little miniature dachshunds named Odie and Crinkles. And we would walk the block. And this cat would walk right with us. And I just called it Cat. I'm real imaginative with names. and this, people would be driving by and say, that cat's following you. And I go, I know, walks with us. And if that cat came neutered already. So I think it was somebody's house cat that got out, or they abandoned, or who knows what. It was a nice cat. Did not like being inside. Every once in a while, it would come in, and I would make sure in the really cold days that it was inside. But I got to tell you a funny story because this will make you laugh. So I had a parrot that I had for 25 years that flew freely around the house, and I actually trained that parrot to fly to the cage to go to the bathroom, and then it would come back and would sit on your shoulder and so forth. And so one day I left for the office, and I went out the door, and that cat must have slipped in, and I didn't see it slip in. I came home 8 hours later, and my dogs were always at the back door that I entered in, and they weren't there, and I'm calling them, and they're not coming. And you're going like, uh-oh, what's going on here, right? And so I walk in to the dining room, and my bird was green and gray and so forth. And there are green and gray feathers everywhere.
Oh.
And I think, uh-oh, something got Lido. That was the name of the bird. And Lido would fly down with my dogs and eat with them. The dogs loved, the parrot would sleep with the dogs. And I went, uh-oh, the cat got in. And I looking like, and here's that cat in one of the bedrooms on the bed, one of my little miniature dachshunds, Odie, guarding the door, Crinkles guarding Odie. They wouldn't let that cat out of the room. And I found that bird stuffed in the pillow in my bed. She had buried herself into the pillow for protection. I would think you'd go up on like a curtain rod or something, or there was a canopy bed that you could go on, but she buried herself in the pillows, and she was just frozen.
And she lived.
It was a feather duster that I had that the cat had got. So, you know,
it wasn't the bird.
But it was like, what trauma to walk into. You know, so my experience with cats isn't like great. But I moved, and I took the cat with me. The cat was miserable. And I had a neighbor that said, if that cat's not happy, bring it back, I'll take care of it. So I would go, after like 6 weeks of the cat being miserable in my house, I mean literally like personality change, urinating, you know, all that stuff. I took the cat to the neighbor, and she was back in her environment, and he was back there, and I was real happy, and I would go visit. It was always happy to see me, until one day it was like, okay, I'm done with you.
Yeah, I found a better home now, yeah.
We're at our first break. We'll be back with, that's a funny story, Michelle Bruce and Jessie Klepsic talking about animal rescue and safety and health. Welcome back to Dr. Ed Show. I'm Dr. Edmund Sulkowski, and we're here with Jessie Klepsic and Michelle Bruce, and we're talking about animals, animal safety, animal health. We're going to go into a little detail with Jessie on animal food, but we're going to discuss something because it's actually winter right now. We had our first snowfall today, as nasty as that is. Some say it's beautiful. But Michelle Bruce is co-founder and operator of Fix Your Cat. And she focuses on, she does dogs and cats, but she's focusing on cats. And she brought something that's pretty interesting today, and it's a little cat box.
So I have to give a shout out to the Peters Township Girl Scouts. A number of years ago, they made this as their plan to make these winter boxes for the community, and it was a great project. And at this time of year, people are very concerned about their outdoor cats. Obviously, there are cats that people may be feeding outside, or they just kind of hang out at their place. And in addition to food and water, obviously in the wintertime, they're going to be looking for shelter. And if you're considering sheltering cats, there's a couple different ways to do it. There are shelters available. Dr. Faith Bajalabach and her students make shelters every year, and they go to Agway in 84, and you can get them there for a donation. I would call first to be sure they have a supply, or you can make your own. And if you go on the internet, there are a lot of different ways to make them. Several other ways start out with these plastic totes, and then on the inside, you either get a styrofoam box, or you buy actually styrofoam or insulation, and you insulate the box inside. Inside that box is straw, not hay. Straw because it's dry and it dries out easily, and it also is anti-flea. So in that box, you would have a bunch of straw for them to be able to snuggle down into if the temperatures get very low. In this particular box, the kids actually did put some little plastic doors on them. The cats could go in and out. If the straw gets wet, it dries out quickly. If you would load this up with rags or t-shirts or whatever you have at the house, they stay wet, and that could create a problem in itself. So, look on the internet if you're thinking about winter boxes. This is a really simple way to do it. These styrofoam boxes, I understand, I'll give a shout out to Nutrisystem, I guess. Somebody told me Nutrisystem delivers in very big styrofoam boxes. Sometimes places that sell fish have big boxes, and sometimes hospitals have big boxes. But it's worthwhile. I mean, you will feel better also. And then next year, you can clean out the straw, put in fresh straw, and have a whole clean winter box for next year. So if you can provide them with shelter, it helps them stay healthy. It also means that they're not having to look for inappropriate shelter, like under your boat cover, or because they're going to look. They're not stupid. They're going to want to eat, and they're going to want to stay warm. So if you help them and you provide some things for them to stay warm in, then I think it'll help you in the end too.
And it's not an expensive thing to make.
No, it's inexpensive, really.
It just takes a little bit of time and effort to gather up the components.
Girl Scouts made
these
those,
boxes
so.
are like $6, $10, something like that.
Correct.
And the cat will figure it out.
They do figure it out. And you notice the holes are up higher. Technically, that's good because the snow won't get in there, right? Mm-hmm. So I have seen people actually make really big boxes, and they cut round holes and put flower pots in there, cut the bottom of the flower pots. So it's almost like a tunnel they could go into, so they're not dragging snow and wet into the box.
And so do you place this in the yard, or do you place it on your porch? What do you do with it?
Wherever you are regularly feeding normally. Obviously the porch is great because then they have additional cover. But if you're feeding under your deck, for instance, it would be a good place to put those because they will eat, and then if it's cold, they could go in.
So the food and water are outside, and then not inside the box.
Correct. Right.
And that styrofoam, along with the straw, really is going to...
It's very insulating.
Yeah, because you're incorporating air in there also.
Yeah. Now on this one, it has an entrance and an exit. Technically, most of the groups that you read about who make these boxes, the 2 entrances and exits, feral cats particularly like them because they can't get stuck in there. So if they have to escape, they could get out.
There's always an escape route.
So that's good. But we also see people make them with 1 entrance, and if their cats are relatively friendly, they're not so worried about escaping. So.
Yeah, nice, effective idea.
Yeah.
So with Fix Your Cats, if I have a cat, and I know you do a limited amount of small dogs, what's the protocol, the procedures for me to bring my animal into your facility?
So we have an application basis. We have applications online at fixyourcat.org. It's fixurcat.org. You would print one out, and you would fill it out and either send it in or bring it to the office. You can also get applications at our office in Washington, fill them out, and then at that point we'll get you scheduled. You know, people would like to do it online and that type of thing, but as we are not H&R Block and we don't have a lot of administrative people, we actually keep that application process because we always have a piece of paper so that we don't lose you. We are booking between 2 and 3 weeks out for females now, and probably 2 weeks out for males because of the holidays. And of course, emergencies always take priority. In addition, we do some other advanced surgeries, like we do eye enucleations. We could take a cat's eye out if it needs to be. We remove tails and we remove legs. And those are the 3 things we see in feral cat populations or outdoor cat populations that can be extremely expensive to do. But the people say, oh, you know, if you can help me, I'll take the cat inside. So now they have a 3-legged cat living the life of Riley, and it's doing very well. So we can do those things.
And then you do vaccinations as well at your facility?
We do vaccinations at the time of the spay and neuter, but we also have 3 to 4 days of vaccinations, low cost, $10 for a rabies shot, no charge to come in if the cat's otherwise healthy, $10 for a distemper shot. We also do combo tests. We do 4DX tests. And we do dog vaccinations now every Wednesday.
So you have certain days set aside for certain procedures?
Correct. And if they check out the internet, they can always call and make an appointment or talk to somebody at the office. We make a very big effort to answer our phones because people have questions. So if we can help them with their questions or at least help them plan for spring or whenever they're thinking they're going to tackle their issue, then you know, we're happy to talk to them.
And then it's cash credit card kind of thing?
Cash check is the best. We do take credit cards. We do charge a processing fee. But yeah, and they pay on the day we do the services.
Absolutely,
You know.
yeah.
And we do try. I mean, we do apply for grants just like everybody else. We look for private donations for people who want to maybe fund other people's cats or wellness when they have no money. And we do get people like that. Because it's tough. You know, if you're waiting for a check and your cat's sick, you can't really wait till your check comes in. So we do help as much as we can, depending on how much money we have. And then, as a matter of fact, we have a little angel fund right now. I'm not going to say who started it.
Probably this little angel over here.
There's a little angel right here that you know, people can, if they need a little bit of help. And we hope to be able to top up that fund as we go forward with other donations from people.
And if somebody wants to volunteer?
They can call me. They can come to the office. We don't have, you know, we always look for administrative volunteers for sure. I would like to find some people who would like to just be greeters, sit at the desk, take people's questions, be sure they have the application to fill out, point them in the right direction. And, you know, we always need people like that. And after COVID, I think the concept of volunteering has really gone down. People are a little bit more set at home. They're not really wanting to come out. But yeah, we look for very good professional volunteers. And I'll tell you, we do have very good professional volunteers who are absolutely dedicated to taking care of people and their cats.
And Michelle, you're open 5 days a week?
We're open Monday to Friday. Surgery days, we're open at 5 o'clock in the morning because people can drop off their cats for surgery between 5:30 and 6:30 in the morning. And then they leave them with us for the day, and they go home between 3 and 4:15, and the owner's responsible for their recuperation. And of course, we send them with information. They have pain meds in their system. So yeah, at that point, they have a 10-day recovery at home.
Okay, and your website again is?
fixyourcat.org.
And you're located?
222 Hull Avenue in Washington, which is right by Wash High, if you know where Washington High School is. So
it's very easy to get to,
yeah,
actually.
it is very easy to get to once you find it.
Yeah. So I want to thank you so much. I know you have to leave. You have another appointment you have to get to. We appreciate you coming on and informing the audience.
We might have to come back later on and bring some kittens or something.
We will. We'll do it again.
Yeah. So please take care of your cats this winter. If you are feeding, be sure they have food, water, If you have a heated
Water
water
that
bowl.
freezes.
Heated water bowls are available
Yeah.
kind of at Tractor Supply places, those type of places, so that they can still drink, and then also, you know, provide some kind of cover for them. That's important.
Yeah, because there's potential to freeze in wintertime.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
literally freeze to death.
Well, and I will say we do see cats that get frostbite ears, and unfortunately, once in a while, we see cats that have frostbite feet because they run through water and they freeze, and those are usually, that's not usually a good thing. So, yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break here on the Dr. Ed Show. And again, thank you, Michelle Bruce, for coming on. Fix
for
your
having us.
cats and
again.
fix a little bit of your dogs.
Yeah, pick a couple dogs. Maybe we'll add that. Yeah, fix your cat and a couple dogs.
A couple dogs. You heard it here first on the Dr. Ed Show. And we're going to come back and we're going to focus on Angels for Animals with Jessie Klepsic. We'll be back.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
All right.
We are back on the Dr. Ed Show. We're here with Jessie Klepsic, Angels for Animal, and a little angel herself most of the time, although I could tell you some stories, but I won't. Jess,
Yes,
tell us a little bit about why you founded Angels for Animals.
Because there was a need, a very definite need. I worked at the Humane Society for 6 months, and I saw what transpired there, and I thought, I can do better on my own.
So you're not a rescue facility.
No.
When a dog comes into your care, you find foster homes for them, or you
Yes.
care for them yourself.
Yes.
So tell us what a foster home is.
A foster home would be like you saying, I would like to be a foster family person, whatever. You take the dog into your home, you care for it like it was your own. I would pay for the food, any vet, and of course a lot of the smaller dogs, which is mostly what we do anymore, need grooming, so I pay for that. We have people that do work with us for that are local. You would probably have to work on the potty training, the socialization, and any other thing that the dog would need. We in turn interview people because we have our dogs listed on the pet finder on the computer. They can go in there and see what we have, and there is a criteria that we list on there as
Well, we'll talk about adoption and so forth,
Yeah.
but a foster care home is a temporary home.
correct. However, some of them have worked into long-term homes because
They've
of us
fallen
not
in love
being
with the
able
dog
to,
and so forth.
yeah.
So in a foster care home, are there requirements that you have to be a foster care parent?
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Most of the times you have to have another dog because the dogs I take in have been with other dogs. And if you put them in a single dog situation, they do not do well. They do not. And definitely a secure fenced yard. Those are the two most important things.
So a lot of times a dog will mimic another dog
Mm-hmm.
when they start to pack, and that's part of the reason why you like to have a foster home that has other animals in there.
Right.
What if they have a cat?
It depends. If we know the dog is good with cats, we can put it with a cat. But sometimes we don't know that up front. But one of my foster homes, she does have 3 cats, and she's integrated that cat and dog, and it's worked great because the dog's going out. They are fine with cats. They're not aggressive, and the cats are not aggressive to the dog, so that works very well. But
they're-
not all foster homes
So they're,
have a cat.
they're getting along not like cats and dogs, huh?
Right. But it does work. Yeah, it does work.
So you always are in need of a foster home.
Absolutely.
So how many animals would you say in a month time you rescue now?
Not too many now because of different things that are going on in the world. People are turning their dogs back to the humane societies, or they're returning them to the rescues where they got them. Now, we do have a policy in our contract that says if for any reason you can't keep the dog comes back to us, even if you've had it for a couple years. Dog in question is my little Katie, who is a Yorkie. She was adopted out and the owner died. The neighbor called me and she said the husband did not want the dog. He just said, get rid of the dog. I said, I'll be there. I got in my car, went and got the dog. She has stayed with me because at that point she was 10 years old. And I thought, I can't do that to her again. And she fit in well with my dogs. I have a couple of other dogs at home. They're very friendly. They accepted her. She's fine. But now she's 14. So she's getting to the very, very senior end of her life. So she does need different meds. She needs different food. She needs different things other than the other dogs. But she is integrated fine, and I'll keep her to the end. So that's part of my agreement with my contract, that I take that dog back, you know, in that case.
So in a foster care environment, you're providing all the food for the foster care?
I pay for that, yes.
And all the veterinarian bills and the grooming bills?
Right.
So how do you fund all of that, Jess?
I work.
What do you
As
do?
you know.
What do you do?
Well, right now I'm driving a school van, which I drove big bus for Peters Township for 30 years, but I worked for a contractor. I did not work for Peters Township.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I drove bus for 30 years.
And then you do other forms of fundraising?
Not a lot. I have a couple people that every year they'll send me a check, but if I get $1,000 contribution for the year, that's as much money as I get during the year. Most of it I do myself.
Well, I tell the story all the time. Jessie and her husband Pete have classic cars, and as do I. And one day she says, "Here, I want to show you what's in my garage." And I think I'm going to look at a classic car, and she opens up the garage door, and it's full of bags and barrels of tin cans, aluminum cans. I always say tin cans, but aluminum cans.
I forgot about that when you said about fundraisers, yeah. And I pick those up myself. People call me, and the Messenger, which is a small local paper, they have run my ad for years. I can't tell you how many years that ad has been in there. And people call me from a distance, and they say, "I have all these cans, I don't know what to do with them." So I arrange to meet them and pick them up. Then I take them to what I call the crusher, the General Ellie's in Washington, and they're a scrapyard, and they weigh them, and then they pay me for the amount that I have. And so it's better for me if you crush the cans, because it makes the bag heavier, and we go on weight when we, you know, check in there, and then I get more money for that, and I can put more in my car. One day I was there, and a man was watching me, and he said, "I can't believe how many cans you have in your car." I said, "I've been doing this for a number of years. I know how to do it." But I had so many you couldn't believe.
And then you also sell the Joy book every year.
The Enjoy coupon book,
Yeah.
yes.
And all those little things help.
Yep.
And do you take other donations,
Oh,
like
yeah.
bedding and
Yes,
things
when
like that?
people have their dogs die or whatever. In fact, I just took one from a friend of mine. In fact, I had gotten her the dog, her last two dogs, and when this one died, she said, "Can I bring all this stuff over for you?" I said, "Sure." So then I am donating it to another lady who needs it. You know, she's got bigger dogs, and she's on a very limited income. So whatever I have that she can use, I just give it to her. And then she uses it for her dogs. Even if we have like extra food, because sometimes when the dog dies, they have just gotten a new bag of food. So I'll say, "Yep, just bring it all over. We'll give it to somebody who can use it."
And the winter time is especially hard on dogs, animals, outdoors.
Oh, yes.
And Christmas and the holiday seasons are in particular a little harder. And that, do you adopt a dog out during the
No,
holiday season?
we take everything down. Probably the 1st of December, we'll be taking them off the internet. They will not reappear until maybe the first, second week in January. Yes, because of that.
And what's the reason? What's the...
We get too many people that want a puppy for their grandmother or for the kids, and everybody's too busy during the holidays. We're cooking, we're cleaning, we're having parties, and nobody's paying any attention to the dog. The dog could very easily slip out the door, or they could feed it something it shouldn't be eating, or not even taking care of it, not training it to go out and do its business. So it's just better if we just stop everything and then start it up after January. It works a lot better.
Yeah. So how many dogs do you have in foster care right now?
Probably, I'd say, maybe about 6 to 8.
And that's pretty much on average.
Yes.
Every month you have that.
I only have 2 working foster homes right now. And the one lady, she has 4, and then the other lady, she's got the balance. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they've been doing it for years for me, so they know what to do. And they just take them to the groomer, and I just pay the groomer and things like that. And they buy the food, and then I just give them a check for whatever they have bought, you know.
So how do these animals end up in your care? Why do they?
I can take them from a number of places. Now, I don't take everything because I'm not equipped to take everything. I can't take a big dog. I don't have anybody that can foster a big dog. So people, if they die, oh, my family will take care of it. No, doesn't work. Family won't take care of it. Sometimes I help animal control. If they have something that I can do for them, I do that. Lost and found we don't have a lot of, because there's a lot of internet programs now. It's Lost My Dog or whatever. You can put your dog on there. So I don't take a lot from that. But there are situations that come up that I have to look at to see if I can take that dog, if they'll fit in, the age of the dog, the health of the dog, you know.
Mm-hmm. And you do a lot of Yorkies, huh?
I do a lot of Yorkies and Shih Tzus, yes. Very nice. In fact, one of my foster homes, we took in 2 females, didn't know this, they were both pregnant. Ended up with 10 puppies.
I remember that.
Yeah. And we still have one left, and he has to be an only dog, though. He's kind of the boss, and he doesn't do well with another dog. But he's a young dog. He's 17 months old, beautiful little dog. Very nice, potty trained.
Dog with an attitude, huh?
Yep. Got to be the boss. He's the dog, you know. But he's a very nice little dog. But he is a Shih Tzu, and he's very pretty.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's looking for a home. But it has to be a special home.
So we're going to go into detail on the process here of how you can find a forever home for your dogs. And do you do much on the internet?
I don't. One of
So
my
this is
foster
all
homes.
This is all old school with a phone call and an interview.
Oh, I have to talk to everybody.
Yeah.
Nobody gets away with not talking to me. Correct.
So what is the process if I would want to talk to you about adopting a dog?
You would call me. And it says right on our little blurb with the dog on the internet, you need to call my number, and for a phone interview, I think is how it's put.
What is that number?
724-941-5737. His age and my age.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do actually a second part to this show here, a whole dedicated show on the process. And when you call that number, here's what you're going to hear. This is Angels for Animals. Don't call after 9 p.m.
I've always wanted to change that to make it 8 p.m. You'd be surprised. People call me 8:45, and I'm headed for bed.
Jess, we're at the end of this particular part of the show, and we're going to, of course, come back and do the second half. So we're here with Jessie Klepsic, founder and operator of Angels for Animals, and also I would remind everybody they can listen to me live every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on AM 1250, The Answer.
And sometimes
Dr.
I'm
Ed
there
Show.
to talk to also.
Every once in a while.
Yeah, I make a visit.
You make a visit. And remember this, because it's actually pretty apropos right now. A healthy pet is a happy pet, and when you're healthy, you're happy as well. God bless.